Hi. I know it's been a really long time. Long story short, you already know it's been 3 years. I've inherited a home. That's a story. I got a new job. Then I got 2 promotions, gained a little bit of weight. I have just been living life. I'm not going to get into the whole thing about it, but I'm here to read. Excuse me. I am here to read to you all. I know something came over me last night and I was led to go look at some old videos. And I never would have guessed that of all the things that I post on YouTube, that it would be my reading videos that people would gravitate to. And everyone's like, come back, finish reading. And if they come back and finish the story, great. If not, at least whoever comes back in the future, you're able to get a full reading. My apologies for going on my social media break and never coming back. I'm not really good with social media, so that's neither here nor there. I'm going to read. I'm going to pick up where I left off. And then once I finish, I would love to continue reading. I have a few books I would like to read. I'll put up a poll to see if you all are interested in it. But I think I already know what I want to read, but I just would love to gauge if there's anyone here that is here, if there's anyone subscribed that's for my reading, here for my reading. All right, kiddos, let's finish The Color Purple. We are picking up on page 133. Okay, 134. As you know, Celie found the letters. She's reading over the letters, and Nettie is basically like, if you can believe in Africa, if you can believe everything that I'm telling you, then you've got to believe that I'm still alive. And so we are picking up on Nettie's letters. The next one after that say, Dear Celie, while we were in town, Corrine bought cloth to make me 2 sets of traveling outfits, one olive green and the other gray, long gored skirts and suit jackets to be worn with white cotton blouses and lace-up boots. She also bought me a woman's boater with a checkered band. Although I work for Corrine and Samuel and look after their children, I don't feel like a maid. I guess this is because they teach me, and I teach the children, and there's no beginning or end to teaching and learning and working. It all runs together. Saying goodbye to our church group was hard, but happy too. Everyone has such high hopes for what can be done in Africa. Over the pulpit there is a saying, Ethiopia shall stretch forth her hands to God. Think what it means that Ethiopia is Africa. All the Ethiopians in the Bible were colored. It had never occurred to me, though. When you read the Bible, it is perfectly plain if you pay attention only to the words. It is the pictures in the Bible that fool you. The pictures that illustrate the words. All of the people are white. And so you just think that all the people from the Bible are white too. But really, white people lived somewhere else during those times. That's why the Bible says that Jesus Christ had hair like lamb's wool. Lamb's wool is not straight, Celie. It isn't even curly. What can I tell you about New York? Or even about the train that took us there? We had to ride in the sit-down section of the train, but Celie, there are beds on trains, and restaurants, and toilets. The beds come down out of the walls over the tops of the seats, and they're called berths. Only white people can ride in the beds and use the restaurant, and they have different toilets from coloreds. One white man on the platform in South Carolina asked us where we are. Start up. One white man on the platform in South Carolina asked us where we were going. We had got off the train to get some fresh air and to dust the grit and dust off of our clothes. When we said Africa, he looked offended and tickled too. Niggers going to Africa, he said to his wife. Now I've seen everything. When we got to New York, we were tired and dirty, but so excited. Listen, Celie, New York is a beautiful city, and colored own a whole section of it called Harlem. There are colored people in more fancy motor cars than I thought existed, and living in houses that are finer than any white person's house down home. There are more than 100 churches, and we went to every one of them. And I stood before each congregation with Samuel and Corinne and the children, and sometimes our mouths just dropped open from the generosity and goodness of those Harlem people's hearts. They live in such beauty and dignity, Celie, and they give and then reach down and give some more when the name Africa is mentioned. They love Africa. They defend it at the drop of a hat. And speaking of hats, if we had passed our hats alone, they would not have been enough to hold all the donations to our enterprise. Even the children dredged up their pennies. Please give these to the children of Africa, they said. They were all dressed so beautifully too, Celie. I wish you could have seen them. There is a fashion in Harlem now for boys to wear something called knickers, sort of baggy pants, fitted tight just below the knee, and for girls to wear garlands of flowers in their hair. They must be the most beautiful children alive, and Adam and Olivia couldn't take their eyes off of them. Then there were dinners we were invited to, the breakfasts, lunches, and suppers. I gained 5 pounds just from tasting. I was too excited to really eat. And all the people have indoor toilets, Celie, and gas or electric lights. Well, we had 2 weeks of study in the Olinka dialect, which the people in this region speak. Then we were examined by a doctor, colored, and given medical supplies for ourselves and for our host village by the Missionary Society of New York. It is run by white people, and they didn't say anything about caring about Africa, but only about duty. There is already a white woman missionary not far from our village who has lived in Africa for the past 20 years. She is said to be much loved by the natives, even though she thinks they are entirely different species from what she calls Europeans. Europeans are white people who live in a place called Europe. That is where the white people down home come from. She says an African daisy and an English daisy are both flowers, but totally different kinds. The man at society says she is successful because she doesn't coddle her charges. She also speaks their language. He is a white man who looks at us as if we cannot possibly be as good as the Africans as this woman is. My spirit sort of dropped after being at the society. On every wall, there's a picture of a white man, somebody called Specky, somebody called Livingston, somebody called Daly, or is it Stanley? I looked for a picture of a white woman but didn't see one. Samuel looked a little sad too, but then he perked up and reminded us that there is one big advantage we have. We are not white. We are not Europeans. We are black, like the Africans themselves. And that we and the Africans will be working for a common goal, the uplift of black people everywhere. Your sister, Nettie. Dear Celie, Samuel is a big man. He dresses in black almost all the time, except for his white clerical collar. And he is black. Until you see his eyes, you think he's somber, even mean, but he has the most thoughtful and gentle brown eyes. When he says something, it settles you, because he never says anything off the top of his head, and he's never out to dampen your spirit or to hurt. Corinne is a lucky woman to have him as a husband. But let me tell you about the ship. The ship called the Malaga was 3 stories high, and we had rooms called cabins with beds. Oh, Celie, to lie in a bed in the middle of the ocean, and the ocean, Celie, more water than you can imagine in one place. It took us 2 weeks to cross it. And then we were in England, which is a country full of white people, and some of them are very nice with their own anti-slavery and missionary society. The churches in England were also very eager to help us, and white men and women who looked just like the ones at home invited us into their gatherings and into their homes for tea and to talk about our work. Tea, to the English, is a really nice picnic indoors. Plenty of sandwiches and cookies, and of course, hot tea. We all used the same cups and plates. Everyone said I seemed very young to be a missionary, but Samuel said I was very willing, and that, anyway, my primary duties would be helping with the children and teaching a kindergarten class or two. Our work began to seem somewhat clearer in England because the English had been sending missionaries to Africa and India and China and God knows where all for over 100 years. And the things they had brought back, we spent a morning in one of their museums and it was packed with jewels, furniture, fur carpets, swords, clothing, even tombs from all the countries they had been. From Africa, they have thousands of vases, jars, masks, bowls, baskets, statues, and they are all so beautiful. It is hard to imagine that people who made them don't still exist. Pause. But some of this stuff was stolen. I don't mean to laugh. Maybe some of the missionaries did get it, but then, history will have us know that some of this stuff was stolen. And, they're doing deaccessioning in museums or they have to give them back. That's a long story for another day. Anyway. And yet the English assure us that they do not. Although Africans once had a better civilization than the European, though of course even the English do not say this, I get this from reading a man named J.A. Rogers. For several centuries they have fallen on hard times. Hard times is the phrase the English love to use when speaking of Africa. And it is easy to forget that Africa's hard times were made harder by them. Millions and millions of Africans were captured and sold into slavery. You and me, Sealy, and whole cities were destroyed by slave-catching wars. Today, the people of Africa, having murdered or sold into slavery their strongest folks. Wow. Can we just pause there for a minute? I think sometimes people forget that we got over here because our own people sold us. Okay? Are riddled by disease and sunk in spiritual and physical confusion. They believe in the devil and worship the dead, nor can they read or write. Why did they sell us? How could they have done it? And why do we still love them? These were the thoughts I had as we trampled through the chilly streets of London. I studied England on a map, so neat and serene, and I became hopeful, in spite of myself, that much good for Africa is possible, given hard work and the right frame of mind. And then we sailed for Africa, leaving Southampton, England on the 24th of July and arriving in Monrovia, Liberia on the 12th of September. On the way, we stopped in Lisbon, Portugal, and Dakar, Senegal. Monrovia was the last place we were among people we were somewhat used to, since it is an African country that was founded by ex-slaves from America who came back to Africa to live. Had any of their parents or grandparents been sold from Monrovia, I wondered? And what was their feeling? Once sold as slaves, now coming back with close ties to the country that bought them to rule? Celia, I must stop now. The sun is not so hot now, and I must prepare for the afternoon classes and vesper service. I wish you were with me, or I with you. Your love. My love, your sister, Nettie. Dearest Celie, it's the funniest thing to stop over in Monrovia after my first glimpse of Africa, which was Senegal. The capital of Senegal is Dakar, and the people speak their own language. Senegalese, I guess they would call it, and French. They are the blackest people I ever seen, Celie. They are black like the people we are talking about when we say, so-and-so is blacker than black. He blue black. They are so black, Celie, they shine, which is something else folk down home like to say about real black folks. But Celie tried to imagine a city full of these shining blue-black people wearing brilliant blue robes with designs like fancy quilt patterns. Tall, thin, with long necks and straight backs. Can you picture it all, Celie? Because I felt like I was seeing black for the first time. And Celie, there is something magical about it. Because the black is so black, the eye is simply dazzled. And then there is the shining that seems to come really from moonlight. It is so luminous, but their skin glows even in the sun. But I did not really like the Senegalese I met at the market. They were concerned only with the sale of their produce. If we did not buy, they looked through us as quickly as they looked through the white French people who lived there. Somehow, I did not expect to see any white people in Africa, but they are here in droves, and not all are missionaries. There are bunches of them in Monrovia too, and the president, whose last name is Tubman, has some in his cabinet. He also has a lot of white-looking colored men in his cabinet. On our second evening in Monrovia, we had tea at the presidential palace. It looks very much like the American White House where our president lives. Samuel says, the president talked a good bit about his efforts trying to develop the country and about his problems with the natives who don't want to work to help build the country up. It was the first time I heard a black man use that word. I knew that to white people, all colored people were natives, but he cleared his throat and said he only meant native to Liberia. I did not see any of these natives in his cabinet, and none of the cabinet members' wives could pass for natives. Compared to them, in their silks and pearls, Corinne and I were barely dressed, let alone dressed for the occasion. But I think the women we saw at the palace spend a lot of their time dressing. Still, they looked dissatisfied, not like the cheery school teachers we saw only by chance as they herded their classes down to the beach for a swim. Before we left, we visited one of the large cocoa plantations they have. Nothing but cocoa trees as far as the eye can see, and whole villages built right in the middle of the fields. We watched the weary families come home from work, still carrying their cocoa seed buckets in their hands. These double as lunch buckets the next day, and sometimes, if they are women, their children are on their backs. As tired as they are, they sing, Celie, just like we do at home. Why do tired people sing? I asked Corinne. Too tired to do anything else, she said. Besides, they don't own the cocoa fields, Celie. Even President Tubman doesn't own them. People in a place called Holland do. The people who make Dutch chocolate. And there are overseers who make sure the people work hard, who live in stone houses in the corners of the field. Again, I must go. Everyone is in bed and I am writing by lamplight. But the light is attracting so many bugs, I'm being eaten alive. I had bites everywhere, including my scalp and the bottoms of my feet. But did I mention my first sight of the African coast? Something struck in my soul, Celie, like a large bell, and I just vibrated. Corinne and Samuel felt the same, and we kneeled down right on that deck and gave thanks to God for letting us see the land for which our mothers and fathers cried and lived and died to see again. Oh, Celie, will I ever be able to tell you all? I dare not ask. I know. But leave it all to God, your ever-loving sister, Nettie. Dear God, what with being shot, crying, and blowing my nose and trying to puzzle out words, us don't know. It took a long time to read just the first 2 or 3 letters. By the time us got up to where she good and settled in Africa, Mr. and Grady come home. Can you handle it? Asked Suge. How am I going to keep from killing him, I say. Don't kill, she say. Nettie be coming home before long. Don't make her have to look at you like us look at Sophia. But it's so hard, I say, while Suge emptied her suitcase and put the letters inside. Hard to be Christ too, say Suge, but he managed. Remember that. Thou shalt not kill, he said, and probably wanted to add on to that, starting with me. He knowed the fools he was dealing with. But Mr. Not Christ, I'm not Christ, I say. You somebody to Nettie, she say, and she be pissed if you change on her while she on her way home. Us here, Grady and Mister in the kitchen. Dishes rattling, safe door open and shut. No, I think I feel better if I kill him, I say. I feel sickish, numb now. No, you won't. Nobody feel better for killing nothing. They feel something is all. That better than nothing. Silly, she said. Nettie not the only one you got to worry about. Say what? I asked. Me, silly. Think about me a little bit, Miss Seeley. If you kill Albert, Grady be all I got left. I can't even stand the thought of that. I laugh. Think about Grady's big tooths. Make Albert let me sleep with you from now on while you here, I say. Or somehow or other. And somehow or other, she do. Well. We got a glimpse into the other side of the world, which we come to find that race is an issue everywhere, no matter which way you cut it. I find that quite interesting, that even in Africa, the Africans kind of treat her a little different. Not all of them, just some of them, right? I also find it interesting that when Nettie went to England, that the white people in England were just so hospitable. And there's a point that she made that they drank on the same cups and plates, indicating that back home in America, you can't even drink on the same cups and plates. You have to have, colored cups and plates. I thought it was also interesting in that passage how the president of Monrovia spoke about the black people from Monrovia as if, he was white, if that makes sense. Does it track? So yeah, we got through the letters. Nettie is alive. Celia is trying not to kill Mister. And Suge convinced Mister to let Celia sleep with her because she probably was going to kill Mister in his sleep. We're back. I will be back tomorrow to read some more pages. I will see you all, okay? I promise. All right, y'all, we're back. Love you. Bye.